Hello everyone and welcome to the first panel on the Expo stage this morning. My name's Rachael Burton. I'm a producer at Watershed working on Bristol and Bath Creative R&D, and I'm the lead producer on the Expanded Performance Pathfinder. I'm a white woman with long curly blonde hair, in my early 30s wearing a blue sleeveless dress, and I'm sitting in a pink bedroom with some pictures and a mannequin behind me. My pronouns are she, her. I'm joined by British Sign Language interpreter Sarah Anchors, who's currently signing. Sarah's pronouns are she, her. She's a white woman in her early 40s and is wearing a black top. Her hair is short and red, and she is sitting in front of a green screen. I'm also joined by British Sign Language interpreter David Wolfenden. David's pronouns are he, him. He's a white middle-aged man wearing an open collared shirt. He's sitting in front of a blue background. The title of this panel is Expanded Performance Processes and Collaborative Practice. And in a minute, I will introduce our four brilliant panelists who I've had the total pleasure of working with over the past year through their fellowships and industry partnerships. But first, I wanted to briefly talk about the theme, expanded performance. So we believe expanded performance is the experience of liveness and togetherness within performance. We've been exploring theatre, live music, dance, and creative technology. As technology advances, we're looking to the future of the live performance sector. In some cases, these advancements have accelerated over the last year due to lockdown, but some have also slowed. We're interested in the affordances of technology and creating space for artists and creatives to be involved in the early stage development of hardware and software, so we can play and iterate with it and ultimately make it better and more human-centred. Some people often expect us to lead with the technology, but actually it often takes a back seat to start with. We're about people, art, and interdisciplinary collaboration. Technology is a really important part of this conversation, but it often doesn't come first. It comes at the right time. We're interested in the messy, complicated, and behind-the-scenes stuff. How do we make together? How do we play together? What makes our process better? How can we be more inclusive and equitable in our processes and what we make? How do we share our work with our audience early on, and how do we test it? How do we co-create with communities in a meaningful way? So these are some of the questions that our panelists have been exploring through their research. And as technology has become more prevalent within their creative practice, as well as collaborating with new people across different sectors, new processes and approaches to collaborative practice have begun to emerge for them. So this panel will last for 45 minutes, and I will ask the panelists some questions before opening the floor up for audience questions. Please do type any questions in the chat as you think of them, and I will pick them up later. So I'd like to invite our four panelists to join me now. Hello everyone, welcome. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and give us a snapshot of where your research has taken you over the past year. So I'll hand over to Penny first, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Penny Haye. I'm an artist and educator, reader in creative teaching and learning, and research fellow in the Centre for Culture and Creative Industries. In this context, I'm working as an industry partner, as director of research for a charity, House of Imagination. I'm a white woman with longish, lockdown, fair hair, greyish, with black framed glasses. I'm in my late 50s, wearing a black jumpsuit in a blue study full of books. My pronouns are she, her. So, where has my research taken me? Where do I start? I've really relished the opportunity to be given the time and space to explore and play with ideas and possibilities. And I started the work with a cohort literally not knowing what I was going to do, but I was keen to diversify our practice, our creative practice, and co-produce work alongside young people. So thinking particularly about the concepts of liveness and togetherness, I wanted to explore the best ways to co-create multimedia immersive experience that pushes the boundaries of art, and aligned with one of our signature projects, the Forest of Imagination. So I wasn't sure whether this was going to be virtual or physical or hybrid or all of them. So my key question was around how to engage young people in expanded performance in an authentic, inclusive and creative way. I mean, my favourite question was around the kind of the liminal space between, the essence of sensory experience and the relationship between the concrete and the abstract, where the real and imagined coexist. So incredibly, and I'll tell you more about this later, but through a moment of serendipity, we now have the Rabbit Holes Collective, and the seeds of this idea was sown when I met Ian Forrester, who's senior fire starter from BBC Creative R&D, and we followed up with a deeper conversation about imagination. I explained I wanted to invite young people to fall down a metaphorical rabbit hole and connect more deeply with nature and creativity. So Ian immediately introduced me to James Cook, the editor-in-chief of BBC Creative R&D, and previously with BBC Wildlife, and he's leading on the Centre of Excellence for Adaptive Podcasts. So we discussed the notion of rabbit holes as a universe of possibility and a constellation of ideas. So using sensory tech and inviting young people, everyone actually, to follow their fascinations through self-directed inquiry. So I'll tell you more later.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Penny. I'm going to hand over to Lloyd next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lloyd Coleman, and I'm the Associate Media Director of Power Orchestra, which is an integrated orchestra of disabled and non-disabled professional musicians based here in Bristol. I'm the Associate Media Director of that group, and in this context, Power Orchestra has been an industry partner on the Expanded Performance Programme over the last year. I am a white man, 28 years old, with long blonde hair, and wearing glasses. I have blue eyes. I also have a hearing impairment, so I wear hearing aids, and today I'm wearing a pair of headphones, and I'm sat at home in my living room wearing a dark green and navy top. The focus of our research at Power Orchestra this year has been to explore how we can heighten or increase opportunities for deaf and hearing impaired audience members to interact with our shows. So it's kind of taken two phases, our research. We did a lot of talking to deaf and hearing impaired practitioners, which I can tell you more about later, working out what's already out there for deaf and hearing impaired audience members. A lot of our shows are a lot of Power Orchestra shows are very 360 degree in nature. So audience members often have the autonomy to move around the space as and when they choose. So it's very important to us to find something, or we realized it was very important to us to be able to find something, or indeed design something that would be portable, that would be discreet from other audience members, that would be cheap to make, but also would be versatile. So a device or a vessel that a deaf or hearing impaired audience member could carry around with them around a performance space to enjoy that performance and to have extra senses kind of stimulated during that performance. So the second part of our year then was spent working with a wonderful technologist called Simmons, and he'd been working with us to develop a series of prototypes, which I can also go into more detail in a little bit.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Lloyd. I'm going to ask Gill to go next.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Gill Simmons. I'm 44. I'm a white woman. I've got dark curly hair that goes back to my ears and looks like an explosion. And I'm wearing a yellow t-shirt and a zigzaggy rainbow cardigan. I'm in front of a very stained white wall, but it's meant to be white. That's my children for you. I'm the artistic director of Brave Bold Drama, which is an award-winning theatre and community arts company based in Withywood, which is near Hartcliffe in South Bristol. And our research question was, does including tech of any kind mean that young people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are more likely to engage? So we sort of found out a bit about that, but mostly we found out more about how difficult it is for arts organisations to share knowledge sometimes and why that might be. And we did find out some stuff about, does tech improve things for young people, or, you know, good examples of tech being used to encourage young people who don't have a culture of arts being very visible in their life and don't have a lot of kind of support to access creativity very much because they're living in a deprived area like Hartcliffe and Withywood, where I live. So we did find out some about that, but it was bigger questions about knowledge sharing and transparency and that. So that's kind of where our research ended up. And we didn't just go, oh, people don't tell us stuff, because that's not much of a find out. So we did then suggest, and we've started to implement some ways on our website where you can champion transparency a bit more and some low cost, low impact, efficient ways that organizations could just be a bit better at telling people what they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gill. I think we should dig into transparency a little bit later on. It would be great to hear more from you on that. And finally, I'm going to ask Roxana to introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Roxanna Vilk. I'm a British Iranian multidisciplinary artist working across live music, theatre and film, often with a community inclusion practice at the heart of it. I'm in my 40s. I have olive skin, long dark brown hair. I'm in a very messy studio behind me with all my musical instruments, some drums, some percussions, a keyboard, microphones. So you're kind of with me in my creative space. Apologies for the mess. And I'm wearing a black top with some zigzaggy designs. My research as part of the Expanded Performance Fellowship has been as an inclusion fellow, and it's been very much practice-based. So through making the work, I've been asking questions, and really the heart of the question has been, how do we co-create with communities from the very beginning of a process to the very end? And right now I'm kind of midway through a process of collecting lullaby songs and stories of heritage from across communities in Bristol. Now the project's kind of opening out across the UK, which is very exciting. And we're looking at ways that we can use new technology, such as adaptive podcasting that Penny was talking about, as well as binaural sound. So we've been building a binaural baby, which sounds a bit creepy, but it's not really. It's just a way of capturing a kind of 360 immersive sound world. And through that journey and the fellowship, I've now connected up with Squid Soup, the industry, one of the industry partners on the Expanded Performance cohort. And I'm in the midst of creating a prototype new compositional tool, which is kind of really a fancy way of saying, how can we live compose sound to be all around us so that there's no barrier between the audience and the performer? So I'm really excited in how we break down barriers, whether that's the inclusion barrier, like who gets to play in the space, but also how do we break down the barrier between performer and audience and making, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. There is so much in all of your work that we can explore in this panel, and process and collaborative practice comes into all of that. And I think it's really interesting to explore those messy bits, the kind of the messy making bits, and how you work with each other, and when it goes right and when it goes wrong, and what we can learn from that. Okay, so I'm going to ask you all a question. So all of your research has involved collaboration or co-creation in some way. What is your process for setting up new relationships to be successful? And what are the challenges you face in that? I'm going to ask Roxana first, if you could pick that one up.
That's an amazingly complex question, but also can be kind of simplified as well, and something that's very current to me right now because I'm setting off on this new journey with Squid Soup, and I've been reflecting a lot around this. And I think it's what you said right at the beginning, Rachel. You know, the tech is almost secondary in the journey. The first step is the human one. Let's connect as humans. Let's find out what we're interested in. Let's go back to that childlike quality of play, which is inherent in any creative endeavor. And to do that, we need to create safe spaces. We need to create trust between us, and we need to have a common language. Often I find I can feel excluded from new technology because there's all these words that I don't understand, or shorthands for pieces of technology. And so part of that is what I've been going through is like my musical language and also the new tech language. Can we unpack a bit of that and then ask some really simple questions, such as, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And then all of us taking a moment to answer that on our own, and then coming together and saying, how do we look at that? And then another very important question that I've discovered is, what is our intention with this collaboration? Who do we hope to bring into the space, and how do we bring them into this creative process from the very beginning? So I think it's constantly evolving, and there's no one, for me personally, no one set methodology that I would take to a process. It's got to be different each time, because we're humans and we're all different. We come with different ideas. So yeah, intention, questions, constantly asking and unpacking those questions.
I think that's super useful, Roxana. Intentions are so important, aren't they, at the start of any project? Penny, is there anything you want to pick up from that, or an answer on that question?
Yes, I mean, I think that the co-word, co-creation, co-creation, co-curation, co-design, collaboration, co-production, they're all words that are at the heart of our work. But I think what the last, however long it's been, has it been a year, has really shown that we have to keep revisiting these concepts so that they're genuine, authentic and ethical. And I think with the Rabbit Holes Collective, as an example, you know, including people in the room here, artists and creative professionals, tech wizards of all disciplines. And I think the collective was conceived genuinely as a community of practice. So where everybody's ideas and expertise, collective expertise and ingenuity are valued and co-designed. So I think, yes, Roxana's right. The intention and the values underpin why you do what you do. I suppose, you know, in that we're interested in making these processes visible alongside young people. And I think that's where inclusion, I mean, radical inclusion and empathy come in as well. So, I mean, as an example, we're working, we're just about to launch a project with the European Broadcasting Union, thanks to Ian and James, working with an international group of young people. So the principles of co-design and co-creation will underpin that process.
Thank you. And Gill, your work is mostly with young people as well, isn't it, in your kind of BS13 locality in South Bristol? Do you want to talk a little bit about that and the kind of collaboration and co-creation that's involved in that and setting up those relationships?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, we do work with other people, and like at them, I mean, I'm at the moment editing radio dramas that have been devised and performed by online memory cafe people who are run by Alzheimer's UK. So we do go beyond young people as well, and that's cool. In terms of setting up relationships and it being successful, it's like mapping first and where the energy is and who's active and who are your allies. And don't, like, we're two people essentially. We're two freelance artists that just voluntarily run a CIC. So our capacity, we have to box clever. So we go like, right, where are the groups already happening? Who are the adults organising that? And what do they know about the young people? What do those young people lack? Sometimes they don't even know, like, especially around here, they don't even know what they could ask for, because no one's shown them stuff. So, you know, but it's starting with the people and then organically responding to that and forming a creative team that will meet those needs. And then the purpose of it is that the voices of people that don't get heard much, that don't have much agency in their lives through socioeconomic conditions, lots of other intersectional reasons that mean they don't have a lot of agency. You want their voices and their opinions to be shaped and presented, and that's where, like, adding the artist's kind of skills comes in, where we know how to present and shape so that people sit up and listen to the voices of people. And that can be anything from as simple as putting a 5-year-old's drawing of an elephant in a party hat, which I have had the pleasure of doing, into a proper glass frame, putting a little card on it, you know, mixed media, artist's name, date she made it. The pride that child had when she used to come into our venue and see that was off the scale. But then yesterday, I watched older people listening to their radio drama and nudging each other, go, it's your bit, isn't it? And like, because I've edited it, I've put echoes on, I've put sound effects, I've put, you know, a bit of concertina on the background, and they're super happy with themselves. And that's the point of it all. Like, we're down here and you want to make the world a better place with your skills. Don't keep it to yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gill. Some nods there for sure. Lloyd, do you want to come in? Do you want to say anything on this question?
Yeah, sure. Just basically to agree with a lot of what's been said so far around that idea of shared objectives and being clear about what it is and why you want to make it. In our case at Power Orchestra, we didn't have a clear idea of how we would do it, but we knew we wanted to enhance the experience of live music making for deaf and hearing impaired audience members. So actually the research stage of our project, before we approached any technology makers or any technologists, it was really important for us to understand what already existed and what were some of the shortcomings of some of the technology that already existed and how they couldn't work in the context of a Power Orchestra show. And then when we started working with Steve, the technologist who we were put in touch with actually by you, Rachael, I think you said, oh, Steve's your man for this. When we were sort of honing in on this idea of creating a portable device that you could carry around with you, which has a microphone attached to it and then translates the sound waves that any instrument is giving off into a kind of haptic response. It was really clear, I should say, working with Hannah Williams-Walton, who's the wonderful exec producer of Power Orchestra, and we went onto a Zoom call with Steve, and it was really clear from the off that he understood the objectives and what we wanted to get to. And also what was really helpful, and I don't know if this was helped in a sort of weird way by the fact we were working a lot via Zoom. In my previous experience of working with technologists and in relation to music performance, it's very easy to get carried away and to get very excited by, you know, shiny ideas and, oh yeah, we can make that bigger, or we could go in this direction. And then you just lose you lose sight of what it is you set out to do in the first place. So I think having that time before we went in, got in touch with a technologist to work with was really, really valuable, because then we had a set of principles and objectives that we pretty rigidly, stuck to and are still sticking to, even as new possibilities and new directions present themselves to us.
Thank you, Lloyd. Gill, I wanted to pick up a little bit on your comments about transparency at the beginning. So with your research through Brave, Bold Drama, and we've obviously talked about you working with young people in technology, you've also been talking to other companies and artists about this approach and process. Can you share a little bit of your learning from this and the challenges that you've faced in people sharing their knowledge with you?
Yeah, so we tried loads of tracks. We tried asking young people directly, no. Working with schools, then COVID, no. Then trying other organisations and then kind of looking historically what was available online, what had already been documented, projects that had happened historically. And Katie Chalk, who I know is watching, hi Katie, helped me on this. She was our intern at the time and is now assistant creative producer with Brave, Bold Drama, because we got on really well, and that's lush. Katie found loads of interesting projects from all over the UK, and some were better documented than others. There was one from Scotland that was brilliant, and it had loads of transparent information about like who was funding it, what the groups were, what the tech was, what the challenges were. I was like, this is good. I didn't have to email anybody. I didn't have to ask. I just got that off the website. So like, why can't more people do that? Why can't that be the culture? Because, you know, people put their impact reports up and like, yeah, that's like your front facing thing. Come on, be honest. Because if you hit a wall with a community engagement project for young people and you got round it, like, share that. Why let other people go over the same cliff? It's not okay. And don't pretend you're always perfect. No one's perfect. Don't hide behind your fancy logo that everybody's heard of and suggest that you always do it right. Nobody does. So I would really just like, therefore, like a call to arms. It's like, come on, we're all just humans. And some people know, you know, find out some really good stuff about how to engage young people with tech and how to overcome socioeconomic barriers. And like, why can't other people trying to do that who've got less resource than you in terms of time and money and power and status, why can't we benefit from that, please? Like, put some downloadable PDFs on your website, put a audio recording of what it says, like, just stick it up there, please. And be honest about the barriers you found and how you overcame them. Because, like, why would you not want that? Why would you not want to improve the experience of engagement projects for young people everywhere? And the other thing I just kind of noticed was when we were chatting all over the country, everyone out of our like immediate area were far more sort of like London, Derby Theatre, big up Derby Theatre. They gave us time. They talked about amazing projects, which I wrote about in our final thing. Not in our funding area, see? And, you know, elephant in the room, but that's the thing. You ask people and they go, oh, no, we've protected that knowledge. We've commodified that expertise. And if I tell you how to do it, you might get funding instead of me. And that's rubbish too. That needs to go off a cliff, doesn't it? So that's what I think.
Thank you. That's a great challenge, Gill. And hopefully some organisations are listening as well. Roxana, I want to come to you next, and you've already talked about your collaboration with Squid Soup on your expanded performance prototype called Circle, and you're currently mid R&D at Trinity. Can you tell us a little bit more about your process as a collaborative partnership with Squid Soup? And you also talk really beautifully about setting up a kind of safe space and a creative space that where artists and anyone you invite in as co-creators can be vulnerable and feel safe. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, sure. We're still mid-process. So at the moment, I'm working as a musician with Squid Soup to create this spatialized compositional tool. And we spent quite a lot of time at the beginning of our process. So we're kind of at the end of week 3 now. At the beginning of week 1, we spent a lot of time working out our intention, working out what the problems are that we were hoping to solve. And then we also realized that we had quite a lot of challenges in the way that we worked. For example, at Squid Soup, they like to discuss a lot around some of the issues of how they're trying to create the structure with all the orbs in the space. And as musician and with other musicians that was bringing into the space, and I'm sure other musicians listening will relate to this, you like to kind of go into this quiet zone to make the music and then work it out as you create. So we had to set up spaces which we called the hyper-focus time, which is when we were going to create an idea. So I created a series of 5 experiments, musical experiments, and we do that all together. So technology and music coming together to do an experiment in silence, unless we needed to ask a question, but we were kind of in the creative zone. And then once we'd done that 45-minute or 1-hour sprint, we'd step outside of the space and discuss it. And we found that quite a useful way of working, because as artists, it's much easier to solve by doing rather than talking. So that's been a useful exercise to try. And we have a check-in, which I really appreciated. Emil, who's in our fellowship from the Egg in Bath, he did a brilliant session around vulnerability and safe spaces and checking in. And it's something that the theatre world do a lot. So I brought that into the music and new tech experiment, which is at the start of the day, you just have a one word or one sentence check-in on how you're feeling emotionally. And try and do the same at the end of the day, although we've kind of forgotten to do that at the end of the day because everyone's always just like tired and wants to go home. But just that ability to be honest about how you're feeling that day emotionally, because as everyone has said so far, we're bringing our human experiences into the space and how we are. So it's really important to acknowledge that, especially because you have to be vulnerable to be courageous. And you have to say things like, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I found that we've stuck that on the wall as well. There's no such thing as a stupid question. So yeah, having a safe space to be vulnerable allows you to take the step in a new direction. But I'm not going to say it's easy. It's definitely brought up, you know, lots of vulnerable moments, but that's part of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I've got one more quick question, one for Penny and one for Lloyd, and I'll ask you to be brief, and then I'm going to open it up to audience questions. We've already had a couple come in. Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, Melissa. But pop them in if you've got questions that you're thinking of now. Gill, there is a lot of love for you being so honest in the chat. I just thought I'd share that with you. Okay, so Lloyd, I'm going to come to you next. So you've already talked a little bit about your collaboration with Steve Simmons and with Hannah at Parrot Orchestra as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about your prototype and the process that you've been through to kind of just develop a shared working practice with Steve? And you talk a little bit about language as well, and finding a shared language between musicians and producers and technologists and what that looks like.
Yeah, totally. And first of all, apologies, I don't have a prototype to show you because I gave it back to Steve to do some more work on. So, but no, I just wanted to pick up on what Roxana was saying as well. Like, vulnerability is really important, and that comes up a lot in not just in the work we've been doing with Steve, but in our wider work at Power Orchestra as well. And isn't it interesting that, like, especially with orchestral musicians who traditionally are used to working, you know, we're often theatre performers and actors and musicians, we're often used to working in very high pressure environments, and we're quite happy to do that as creative practitioners. But then when it comes to like being vulnerable in a room, making stuff with other people, or not quite knowing what you're doing, we get very kind of, you know, many people get very icky and very sort of protective about it. And I think there's a really interesting idea around that we could perhaps talk about more. But in relation to the what a working title, the touch sound, it basically is a small device that you hold in the palm of your hand. And we talked a lot about, in terms of shared language, Steve is a musician, but he's not an orchestral musician. So he was kind of relying on us to describe the environment in which this device would be used. Of course, we haven't actually tested it in a real performance environment yet, because there ain't been no performances in the last year. So instead, we invited Steve along to some of our rehearsals for a recording project we did in a sort of COVID safe space a couple of weeks ago. And that was really, really invaluable, because it's sort of a reminder again that actually talking about something as nebulous as music and sound is, you know, everyone has their own way of describing that. So when I say, oh yeah, I want this device to pick up a kind of earthy, bassy sound in a certain way, or kind of pick up, you know, a very translucent, high kind of whispery sound, yeah, Steve might get what I mean by that, or he might just think that's a, you know, a whole load of tosh from a composer talking out of his other end. So it's just much easier to actually get in the space together and actually play with the prototype. And the prototype he's made for us so far is not fully developed yet. It's still, you know, it's going to carry on past the end of today. But it's just a reminder that actually being in the same space, playing, as Roxana so beautifully put it, just like playing with it and finding, sort of embracing the unexpected as well as the expected. I think it has been a really important part of that process. And now for us, I think hopefully as lockdown eases, we'll be able to test it on more of the people that we will intend the device to be for, which is not other musicians, but actually audience members, and more specifically deaf and hearing impaired audience members. So we haven't got to that stage yet, but obviously once it becomes possible to do that, that is kind of our next stage with the prototype that Steve has delivered so far.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lloyd. Play is so key to all of these conversations and processes, isn't it? And openness. So Penny, I'm going to ask you for quite a brief answer so we can move on to audience questions. But you've mentioned briefly already your new project called Rabbit Holes, and that it's a collaboration with the BBC R&D team. But you've also got quite a large, brilliant group of artists that you're working with. And it seemed like, from a relatively outside position, a very open and porous and kind of generous approach, and the way that you've kind of set that up as a collective, I guess. Can you tell us just a little bit about your approach to that?
Yeah, sure. And I think, Lloyd's right, playfulness, Roxana, everybody is committed to the idea of playfulness and uncertainty. And I think that's where, we have genuinely a multidisciplinary team. So artists, creatives, tech specialists, musicians. Obviously Roxana's bringing her own expertise from that side. Kathy Hines doing some really interesting work around collecting data and sound, hopefully working with Gill, thinking about the idea of Thomas Jucker working with Joseph Harris on the data collected from the roots of the trees, etc., etc. But I think the point is that everybody's ideas are valued, and as a community of practice, as I said, it's really important that we're sharing that expertise. So valuing uncertainty and not knowing where we're going, but actually the journey has been very much about exploring those ideas and seeing what's possible going forward. So I'm very grateful also that, we've had some funding from the Trailblazer Fund, which has allowed us to prioritise artist fees. But just to end, personally as an artist, I'm very, very committed to the idea of this space of possibility and this universe of possibility, which the adaptive podcasts, if we're co-designing them with young people, we can expand on these sensory narratives. I'm very excited about that.
I'm excited about that as well. Thank you, Penny. Okay, I'm going to move on to audience questions now. We've got time for a couple. So this first one's from Vanessa, and she said, how can we overcome the challenge of intention and the complexity of funding criteria that sometimes create obstacles around that intention? Has anyone got any thoughts on that? So where your funding criteria doesn't necessarily neatly match up with your intention of the work.
I mean, I'll start just by saying that it builds on what I've just said. I think what was brilliant about the cohort was that we were learning from each other all the time. And even though we weren't sure on our kind of pathway, we weren't sure on the outcome, the process was so important. So we had a clear intention in terms of the purpose of the expanded performance cohort, but we were able to really put the emphasis on research and development, and that's what was brilliant as an artist. So I'm not sure I've answered your question properly, but hand over.
Gill, you want to come in?
Yeah, so we've got some theatre students on placement with us at the minute from Bristol Uni, and they wanted to know about like funding and that. And I said, you can kind of, decide what you want to do and then find the money that fits that, or you can look at who's got any money and then think about how you can fit the criteria. And we, do both, but we probably do more of that other one, especially since 2020. It's like, right, what community funding is around? What do they want to support? And then what can we do? Because, and I think, I'll finish that sentence first. And I think, that is where we as a our practice is like community arts primarily. I happen to make theatre and music, but primarily that's probably 40% of my job. 60% of it is hanging out with people who haven't got any art in their lives and finding what they want. And that might be graffiti. I don't do graffiti, but I know a bloke who does. And then we find the money, and then we get the graffiti guy down here. So, you know, it's sort of chicken and egg, really. But I would just say, like, you know, there's a huge amount of funding available for community-focused projects. And what I said to our students was, the thing with community funds is they don't want a lot of highfalutin artistic language. They want to know, like, how many old people will feel better and when will it happen and what postcode. And so community artists get used to expressing their work very pragmatically and very practically. We're still flipping good artists, actually, thanks. But we don't tend to express our work in that way. And there is a massive, like, disconnect and status between artists that do their thing all the time, and then they find the funding, and it's like, I do this thing and I get support for it. And then there's, and they get more status and recognition because they do one thing really well, which is great. But artists that do loads and loads of different things to make loads and loads of different people feel better are also great. But we are so poor cousin, and we are really sidelined, and that annoys me a bit. So I would really like for that to change, because actually the community artists have carried on. Like, you know, the massive orgs went into stasis and, you know, just went into aspect, didn't they? And everyone got furloughed. And we were like giving kids creative packs, making films for them. We just carried on. So, like, maybe that's proved that community artists matter just as much, and that, you know, we should be given a seat at the table a bit more. And I this really helped, like, chatting with people. Like, you know, I was in a thing, and Penny's rabbit holes, people with the BBC. Get that. Amazing.
Absolutely, Gill. Thank you so much. I'm going to jump to a question from Fiona, which I think perhaps Roxana and Lloyd, you've got a lot of experience in this. So Fiona's question is, how do you navigate representing underrepresented voices fairly? Have you come across any resistance from the communities you've been working with? Which, or Penny or Gill, but who wants to jump in?
Well, again, I think Gill said it earlier, but I think agency and relationships are really important. And I used the word radical inclusion earlier. I think I have to honour that Claire Doherty and I had a conversation about that, Doherty. But it is really important that people feel included, that they are included, that they see themselves in the project. We personally haven't had any barriers, but I wonder whether, you know, in terms of the digital divide, that's created these chasms where some, particularly young people, haven't been able to engage in projects across the country, across the world. So I suppose prioritising that would be something that I would want to take forward. What about you, Gill?
I was just going to pass to Lloyd. Sorry, he was just about to jump in.
Yeah, no, it's just a very brief one. It's just the old mantra of nothing about us without us, I suppose. You know, that's a mantra that exists in the kind of disability community, if I can put it like that. And I use that word advisedly, community, because of course this is another thing that we were reminded of during the course of our expanded performance research, is that yes, we're designing a device that is for deaf and hearing impaired audiences, but those audiences and those people come in all shapes and sizes and with all many different levels of hearing. You know, my level of hearing is very different to another hearing impaired person's level of hearing. So it's like a constant reminder that actually you have to really listen to people as individuals and engage with them as individual voices, and not treat them as a kind of homogenous whole. These communities that you might be seeking to represent or work with.
Yeah, and just to add to what Lloyd was saying, I think there's a bigger question also in terms of access. So what I've noticed with the Lullabies project, which is why we are translating things into Urdu, Somali and Arabic, is that the group that you're choosing to work with and who want to co-create with you, what are their lives like? When do they have time? I'm working with parents, being one myself, as we all know, have very little time. So putting things on during like working hours, maybe not realistic. When do mums and dads and grandparents with babies have time? Maybe it's first thing in the morning. Maybe it's, you know, when the baby's having a nap. Looking at the really practical things, like if you've got 3 jobs and you're struggling for bills right now, why on earth would you want to get involved in something? You know, what's the point? And something that I realized with the Lullabies ask was that taking a moment of quiet with someone to talk about, so I've been working a lot with refugee communities here in Bristol, to talk about things that are incredibly fragile, such as leaving homelands, suffering PTSD from war. You know, these things are, there's a lot around safeguarding, there's a lot around being really honest and clear. Again, back to intention. Why do you want to make the work, and what on earth is in it for the communities that you're working with, you know, and how to really get to the heart of, is it relevant to them? Is there any, you know, asking the really brutal questions of yourself as well, of like, am I doing this for me, or am I doing it as a, you know, how do we get to the heart of community collaboration? And it's okay as an artist to also say, yeah, there's a part of me that is doing it for me because I've got these questions within my own self that I want to understand around identity, heritage and home. So I think there has to be kind of radical honesty to yourself and with the people you're working with, and looking at why people aren't getting involved. Because let's face it, it's not happening. The landscape's got to change. You know, we are not an inclusive, diverse space yet.
Really important questions to end on, Roxana. Thank you. And thank you, Lloyd and Penny, for your thoughts on that question. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. I've been dodging the sun in my window the whole time. Sorry about that. So 45 minutes goes so quickly, but thank you to all 4 of you and to the audience for your questions. You've been brilliant. You can find out a little bit more about each of our panelists' individual research projects if you scroll down on this page, and you'll see each of them has an individual expo booth. I would recommend you go and check those out. There'll be a short break now on this stage, and then we'll be back at 11 AM with the next panel. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.